the Respondus 4.0 application. It wasn't quite clear to me. I know that you've communicated with Nick, emailed a couple of times, but do you have familiarity with the application? Has anyone in the group used it in maybe perhaps a previous position, or is this the first time, maybe the initial investigation stage with the application?
We've had one faculty member who's used it, and she's used it quite extensively, and I went and saw what she did, but I've never personally used it. And then we have several faculty that I think it would be beneficial because they've got a large question bank that they need to get into Canvas, and we thought this would be an easier way to facilitate that.
Okay. Oh, no, I understand completely. Now, are they working with publisher test banks or perhaps question banks that they've already created themselves that they're looking to import?
A combination of both.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy to walk you through the application, and certainly I can start with just a brief overview of the application itself. Respondus 4.0, this application has been available now for about between 15 and 16 years, so it really is considered what we would call our flagship application. We have over 1,000 institutions that are using Respondus 4, so there are millions of assessments that are created every year and every term, in fact, with this application. Now, from the Respondus 4.0 perspective, it is an exam authoring tool primarily, and it does allow you to manage quite a bit of content. And I'm sorry, if you can bear with me 1 second, I just want to check with a member of our team. We communicate in our office through Skype, and I'm being Skyped, so I just want to make sure I let them know I'm on a webinar. So I apologize for that. Okay. So in terms of the application itself, it is a very seamless way to create assessments for Canvas, and I'm not sure, it sounds like you have one faculty member that uses it rather extensively. Do you know of anyone else that may have downloaded the 30-day trial or maybe has used some of the feature functionality in the trial itself?
Yeah, there may have been two, a history instructor and, well, Deborah Stakes teaches oceanography, and she had her own site license. And then I recommended it to one of our history faculty, Ron Clark, and another one, their name is drawing a blank right now, but they were going to look at the 30-day trial to see if it would be something.
Okay, that's perfect, in fact, because what we typically recommend is that you do have faculty try it with a 30-day trial, and that way they become familiar with it and they have sort of a baseline in terms of whether or not it's something they want to move forward with, if they really like the feature functionality. I think primarily from the perspective of faculty trying the application, one of the biggest benefits I see is that it allows them to work offline when they're creating their content. They don't have to be necessarily on the internet, and certainly they get to create their content and create hybrid materials, in fact. And then at some point, when they're ready to publish to the LMS, they can certainly take advantage of that feature as well. Now, I wasn't sure if any of the faculty had walked you through their experience with the application and how they might be using it. It sounds like primarily they're looking to get that test bank content into the application so that they can then work with it and publish it. But one of the features that I particularly like about the application is that you can also print content. So if you're teaching hybrid types of courses, you have access to being able to create the content, print it for some courses, and then also publish it to the LMS. So there's some nice functionality that gives you access to using it in, say, hybrid types of environment as well. So this is the Respondus 4.0 application itself, and I've actually opened up my instance of it here at Respondus. And you're working within the framework of the Canvas LMS, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I think usually when we start opening up the application and showing it, the first thing to look at really is the personality itself, because you do have quite a few options here that are available to you. So it does integrate with most of the major learning systems, but certainly for our purposes today, we're going to look at the Canvas perspective. And then probably the first thing you'll notice is in the top left-hand corner, you can see that there's a file, edit, view, and help that's available to you. So there are a number of items here, but then you also have a toolbar and the tabs that are available from the start, edit, settings, and preview and publish. One of the nicest things about Respondus is that it does mirror all of the settings within the learning management system. So I think when you're looking at how it actually works for faculty, it makes quite a bit of sense to them when they're working within the framework of Canvas. Because again, it's a perfect mirror in terms of the feature functionality, and you can add all of the settings and requirements here if your preference is to do it here while you're working in that offline environment. So typically in the scenario that you described, probably the first thing your faculty will be working with are the tabs themselves. And you can see we have a number of tabs here: the Open, the Create, Test Bank Network, the Exam Wizard, Import Wizard, and the Archive Wizard. Typically, when you're looking at test bank types of questions or importing questions or content, you're going to start here with this Import Questions. And then this is going to allow you the option to start working with existing files and content. So if you're looking to link to existing file types, you can see that this starts off with plain text, but you have a number of different options that are available to you. So for my purposes today, I'm just going to import a document that I have that's a Word doc file. I'm going to create a new document here. So we're just going to call this Canvas Quiz.
Did the questions need to be formatted in any certain way in that Word document first?
Yes. You notice up here in the top right-hand corner, there's a cancel button, a help button. This help button will automatically link to what we refer to as a standard format for importing documents. And this gives a nice tutorial in terms of how to format the documents themselves.
Okay.
So it will actually walk through the different question types that are available in Canvas. So it's a pretty simple guide to walk through, and it is embedded in as part of the help. So even if faculty have questions when they're working within the application, they can always click on any of the help buttons and it will walk through that tutorial. But even here, the multiple choice, you can see that as long as you have either the number in the parentheses or the number in the period, you can build the question or add the question itself. And then if you're looking to add the question or the response itself, the answer can be noted with either an asterisk or an answer key at the end. So it will simply walk through all the different question types and allow you to look at true-false questions as well. And the true-false is very similar. And the essay question. So once the file has been formatted, then it's just a matter of creating the new document name. And we'll call this 1113.7. And then the faculty member can simply preview the file itself. And the preview is nice too because it will walk through all the different questions. And if there are no warnings, if it's been formatted properly, then it's just a matter of clicking finish, and that will upload that document for any additional work the faculty member might have. Now, if there were warnings, it's a perfect opportunity to just go back and work with that file, maybe just update a couple of questions. But because this is formatted properly, this is simply going to open that document now in the edit template. Now, the edit template itself, you can work either within the framework of the different questions, and the question list is posted below, or I could expand the view. For my purposes, you'll notice in the left-hand margin, when you look at all the edit questions, all the questions themselves, they mirror the question types that are available to you in Canvas. So it is a one-to-one mirror in the sense that if I wanted to add a multiple choice question, I certainly could. True, false, essay question, any of the question types. Now, in looking at the question types themselves, it's just a matter of entering the question wording, walking through the answers, but you can see it's very simple even to select the correct answer, assign point values, and then once the question's been built, I can even add it to the end of the list or insert it into the list. And you can even preview any of the questions. So we'll just simply select one here. You'll notice at the very top in the left-hand margin, there's the File Edit menu bar, and there's a toolbar that's available too. So some of the toolbar icons probably look very familiar in terms of cut, copy, pasting, bold, italics, underscore. I think for me, I particularly like the equation editor that's built into this application. It is a design science equation editor, and I find that math and science folks, faculty really like this particular piece. Very simple to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So does it read like math type in Word, or would you have to redo the equations in Respondus?
Sure. It actually works pretty well with equations, but I do ask that you, when you walk through even that formatting guide, it's, or even the preview and polish, it's a nice way to walk through and see how that actually transfers over. For the most part, I think it does a very nice job of it. Unfortunately, it's not exactly a one-to-one, and it might vary depending on what happens in that formatting of that question. So if there are extra spaces, or if it's, there's a difference between an equation that's built versus an image. So I would absolutely say that that's something you probably have to test and see how it might work for the group.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So then it's just a matter of adding in a couple of different options, selecting the correct answer and the point value, and then certainly you could preview any of the items as well. But for my purposes here, I'm simply going to add this to the end of my list. Another nice thing that the application really does a rather good job of actually is walking through adding media and also adding links within the application. So you can certainly insert raw HTML here, but the media itself, it's very quick to upload media either from your computer or anything that might be found on a web server. So it does a nice job of handling that portion of it. If your faculty are looking to use any of those media components, it's sometimes, I think, even nicer or quicker or easier to do it than it might be in the LMS itself. Let's see here what we have for images. And my apologies, we moved a couple of things. We had a couple of conferences, so I'm not exactly sure what we have for, we'll use a pie here. So it's a pretty simple process to walk through. And I think faculty, once they start testing it and playing with the application, we have quite a few faculty that will actually use this to link to whether it be even audio clips or video clips, something that you might find even out on YouTube.
And then those will translate right into Canvas as audio media?
It does. It does. It does a really nice job of publishing it directly into the instance of Canvas. And basically, when we walk through this piece of it, so we'll put this, do something that makes a little bit more sense. Back step. See if I can pull something up that Ari might have built. And my apologies. This is I'm a little late getting into this webinar, and I try to do this in a little bit more polished of a fashion. So my apologies for being a little behind on the files. We'll use this one right here. And we'll just take something from my desktop. And this will just give us a quick preview, but we'll actually publish this into a test, into an assessment within Canvas when we're done.
France and Italy a little bit.
Yeah.
Or a little bit.
A little bit, yes. Okay. So in terms of any of the settings as well, once you have all of your questions available and you're ready to move forward with the next step, it would be a matter of just updating the settings within the assessment itself. Now, the settings can be set within the framework of the LMS, or it's something that can be done with Respondus before you actually publish the assessment. So you can seamlessly move from one tab to the settings tab, and then start working with either question groups or settings themselves. Now, before we take that next step, I do want to take you back to the Start tab and talk a little bit about that test bank network. Now, the test bank network itself, this is an arrangement we have with publishers that have made their textbooks available for use with Respondus. So this test bank piece, it's a feature within the application. It's not a separate application. It is a free piece of what you would already get with Respondus. So when you open up that first tab for test bank, there's an option here that allows you to search for the publisher test bank. Once you select next, this is going to take you to our website, and it pretty seamlessly allows a faculty member to search for any of their textbooks. So for my purposes, I could search by textbook title. Whoops, go. Back, search here. I could search by author's last name, keyword, by publishers. But for my purposes, I'm going to select Star, who's one of my registered test bank publishers. And this is simply going to give me a list of all the textbooks that are available for me to request. So if I were to request a test bank at this point, I just simply click on More Information and Test Bank Request. And there is a form that I would have to fill out as a faculty member, and this is just so that the publisher can confirm that I'm in fact a registered account and that I do have access to the test bank. And this is how you really ensure that students can never get access to any of this information. But once this information has been completed, it's submitted to the publisher, and the instructor receives a file back. And that file is going to provide them with the information that's required to register the test bank. It provides them with a file code, a password. They'll simply import their name, institution, and email address. And then they'll have the option to link to the test bank itself. So for my purposes, I have several test banks that are already registered. And once a test bank is registered, all of this content remains available for the faculty member. But once I select my questions, it's going to ask me if I want to create a new file or if I want to open or add information to the current file. Then it's just a matter of selecting the text bank that I choose to work with. And the test bank itself is broken down by chapter. And you'll notice that once this actually loads, it's going to give me a number of items that are available, but for this particular chapter, I have 114 questions that I could select from. Now, the test bank network itself, the way it's organized is rather efficient for the faculty member, because from a faculty perspective, they're looking at the chapter, the question numbers, they can look at the item wording, the popularity index, just really notes for that faculty member how popular this question is with other members that are using this same test bank. The flags indicate that there might be some type of an issue with the question itself, and the flags are actually posted by faculty that are using the test bank. So they may have come back to the application, added a flag. It could be that when they've used the question, they found that students found it problematic, or that it's just not clearly written, or perhaps it's even incorrect.
And then you get the updated
Yes.
questions?
Yeah, so from the question perspective, this information does go back to the publisher. So it is up to the publisher to update the test bank, but it is really more a note to that faculty member, letting them know that there might be some type of an issue with that particular question. Now, there are a couple of options. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, so automatic, is that just selecting all questions, perhaps? Or?
Yeah, so with manual, the faculty member has an opportunity to select the questions that they would like to work with. But the automatic option is going to break everything down by the number of questions that are available by question type. So it really allows the faculty member maybe an opportunity to do a random selection of questions that fall into any of those categories. So this just allows me to select 5 of the 82 randomly. And maybe I'd like to assign 2 points per question. And maybe with matching, I'd like this one question, and that might be worth 5 points. And I can either add them to the end of the list or insert them into the list. But this just does an automatic copy of those questions, and it will tell me that the 6 items were successfully copied to the project. When I close this project, it's going to add those questions. And then when I click Finish, it will take me back into this template, and I could simply look at any of the questions that I added as well. Now, once I've added any of the questions that I wanted to add from the test bank itself, at that point, I'd probably be walking into my settings, looking at my question groupings. I could add new sets of questions. Or at this point, I might be walking through setting up my answers. Perhaps I want to shuffle my answers. Keep the highest attempts. I might be adding my availability dates. Once I've added my settings, I can move to preview and publishing. Previewing the file, I think, is always a good idea. Certainly, you could skip this particular question if you wanted to preview, or you could walk through them one by one. When setting up even the publishing piece of it, one of the nice things about the campus-wide option is you do have the option to batch publish to multiple courses. This feature is not available for single-user copies, so faculty that are using this now probably are not able to access this particular piece. So they're probably working with a published to single course. I have access to a Canvas server. I've already added it. When you're working with a campus-wide license, you can set this up so that you're working with pre-configured server settings. So you're basically setting up the availability of that profile for faculty, so they're just selecting their option. Faculty that are using it now probably are working with that single user piece. And what they've chosen to do at that point is to create this server profile here. And even when using, so even when using that single user copy or the 30-day trial, they've walked in, they've copied a couple of URLs directly from their course. They've extracted this information, added the name of their server, and that's how they're doing their publishing, I suspect. For my purposes, ours are set up as pre-configured servers. And this is just a matter of adding these options. I'm going to add this to my English course.
And I saw it had the option to update there. So if you had previously brought some questions in and then you came back and changed them or grabbed new publisher ones, then it would just update.
Mm-hmm.
That's the feature that Deborah uses the most.
So at this point, it's just a matter of opening up my instance of Canvas. Opening up my course. And there it is.
So all those settings, if you had set dates and times, that would all populate into the Canvas quiz.
It does. And faculty still retain the option to be able to set those requirements within the LMS. But if they choose to do it in Respondus, they certainly, it just seems to be a little bit easier when you're creating the quiz.
Yeah.
It is a fairly quick process to walk through. And I think we always encourage having faculty try the 30-day trial and really just playing with it and see how they feel the flow of that content works for them.
So when we do a site license, then each faculty member gets a separate logon, or how does that work?
So from an institution perspective, you do have installation information that you're going to be requiring or pushing out to your faculty. Often you might be putting it on some type of I'm not sure if you have an applications page where faculty go to download their applications, but then there's an institution ID and there are some registration keys that you're providing faculty that they're putting in the very first time when they register the application. As long as faculty publish one assessment during the licensing term, the following year when you renew, it's very seamless to the faculty member. They don't have to enter any codes at that point for the second year.
Oh.
But the one step that I do recommend is setting up the pre-configured server settings for faculty, because it just makes it simpler for them to come in and select the options for the server instead of setting it up themselves.
So is there any integration with like single sign-on, Shibboleth, or?
Sure. So from an integration perspective, it is a client-side application. So basically, as they're walking through it, they're going to be publishing to your learning management system. And I believe it does work with Shibboleth and SSO. And I can have Nick confirm that back to you with Canvas, but I'm almost 100% certain that that's the case.
Cool.
So in terms of the Respondus 4 application, really, when working with this application, it is something that was really intended to make that integration with the LMS seamless, but also to provide faculty with some flexibility on how they work with the application. Because again, often, especially in those hybrid types of situations, faculty aren't always online when they're working, and it could be that they're creating their assessment, and then they might have multiple needs just in terms of how they're working with the assessment. And I know we didn't cover it, but I do want to show you also within that settings tab. When you're in that preview and publish tab, I know we just walked through that publishing piece, but the print options themselves, here's where you find faculty using it really more in that hybrid fashion as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's an in-class type of environment, they may just be printing the file. They can save the file, again, as a doc file if they choose, RTF or plain text file. So often, again, faculty are sort of working on one assessment, but they might be using it in a number of different ways.
Yeah, we did. That brings up one time a faculty asked if they could print their Canvas questions to do offline, like if they had a student that didn't do it. And I was like, no. So this is a great alternative to that.
Right. It's one of the pieces, too. It's kind of interesting to me because whenever you're working with your online quizzes, and not to say that the LMS environment isn't stable, because it certainly is, for most institutions, a very stable environment. But I have quite a few faculty that will come in and even print a couple of assessments off just in case they have issues with a student on their particular device on that particular day, just so they have a backup. So it does give them a lot of flexibility, again, in terms of how they're using the assessment itself and how they're working with it. But we do have quite a following in terms of faculty using this application. It has been around for such a long time that most faculty, if they haven't used it, they probably know somebody else at a different institution that has. It's a really simple way to create the assessments, and then it does save them quite a bit of time just in terms of being able to really very quickly manipulate their content, add additional content to it, publish it, and then use it in a number of different ways. The test bank network, when I started here 6.5 years ago, when I first started here, I think we had somewhere over 1,500 titles, and I know right now we have over 5,000 titles. So the network itself, it's fairly significant. There are a number of publishers that are connected with Respondus and that provide the content in Respondus format. I would also encourage faculty to go out and take a look at the test bank network, because on our website, under our partners, we have a list of technology partners, but we also have a list of publishing partners. And if you find that the test bank is not available for a particular textbook, I always encourage folks to check in with the publisher and see if they're willing to make it available in Respondus format. They're actually pretty good about making the titles available for you.
Now, is there any for a faculty that is creating their own tests, is that protected for them, so it's not going into a test bank for you, so that they have their own tests that nobody else can see?
Sure. So this is a client-facing application. It's not in any way connected to Respondus in the sense that we don't collect any questions. We have no insight into the questions that are created and published to your learning management system. All of this content resides on the faculty member's computer until they publish it to your LMS.
Okay.
So I have a question on the flip side of that. Let's say there are two chemistry faculty and they want to use the same test. Is there a means of sharing intra-campus? Or
Sure.
would you send the file to the other person?
I would actually defer that to our support team, and here's why, because I know that there are instances where they're asked this question, and support may have a specific recommendation based on your LMS that they could provide. In sort of long story short, if an instructor wanted to share a Respondus file with another user, if you will, they could certainly even email the file to another user, and that's something that they could share, they could upload, they could use. But from a networking perspective, it's a client-side piece. It's not networked unless it's set up that way on your LMS. There might be a way that you're able to do that within the LMS framework, but it's not something that Respondus handles on our side.
Okay. I'm just thinking.
It's actually worth, I would say, opening up a ticket with our support team to ask that question. They may have some really good recommendations they've given to other schools.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking we have, for example, some math classes. They all give the same test.
Sure.
So.
No, it's a great question. Again, I think on our side, it's the way the application is built is it's not something that there's an LTI integration with. It's not something that is networked. But again, there's probably a way that you might be able to accomplish some of what you're doing, but support would be the best place to ask that question.
Thank you.
Great.
Of course. Are there any other questions I can answer for you?
Can't think of any at this point. It actually does quite a bit more than what I had seen with the one faculty member that was using it as an independent. And she may have been aware of them, but I just was trying to help her navigate her problem. But yeah, I'm excited about this. So.
How's the pricing work?
So pricing is available on our website, and it is something that we make very public to anybody that's interested in our applications. And the nice thing about, I think, this time of the year as well is that, and I'm sure Nick will probably can walk you through a quote or additional information on pricing, but the campus-wide license itself, there is a one-time registration fee of $200. But in terms of the application itself, it is based on your student FTE or iPads enrollment to the institution. It's an annually recurring price, but the first-year license is always prorated based on the remaining months in the term. So if you're looking to have access to the application for the upcoming spring term, our term runs August 1 through July 31. So Nick would probably be issuing a quote either for December or January timeframe that would run from the start date to July 31. So you'd be looking at a prorated apportionment based on the remaining months in the term. And I'm happy to have Nick follow up with you. Was there a particular target date that you had in mind? I wasn't sure if you were looking for December or possibly January.
Yeah, probably December, because they're going to want to work on it over the break to
Okay.
be active and utilized starting January.
Okay. And your LMS or your iPads enrollment, do you have a rough estimate as to what that might look like?
Is that an annual enrollment or fall term?
So they're looking for unduplicated headcount for the full term.
Okay,
So
so yeah,
bring
we'd
it-
be in the 10,001 to 20,000 range.
Okay. Okay. If you like, I can ask Nick to follow up with a quote that would be prorated for a December 1 start date.
Yeah, because he had sent me a quote for a full year, because it had the 25, 45.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do a prorate for the first year.
Okay. I will ask Nick to make sure that he follows up with that. I expect he's going to be back in the office, barring anything that's unforeseen, on probably Wednesday morning.
Okay, yeah, he said
I'm
he'd
happy
follow
to have him follow.
back in.
I'm sorry?
He said he would follow up when he got back in.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions that I can answer for you?
I think that's good.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. No, it was my pleasure. Again, my apologies. It was a little bumpier than I would have liked to originally start with, but I was sort of backfilling on a couple of pieces I wasn't familiar with. But I appreciate your patience, certainly, and I'm sure Nick will follow up with you as soon as he gets back.
That was great.
Yeah,
Thank you
sure.
very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
And then you'll email me that recording so I can send it out to the other faculty?
Absolutely. What I'll do is I'll actually send you out the recording from today, but then I can send you out a training video. The training video is something that one of our master trainers would provide to faculty, and it's a really nice training. She really does an excellent job of walking through all of the feature functionality from soup to nuts.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye. That's cool.